So the first page simply shows the SDF-1 crashing into Macross Island, which the only narration for that page is on the last panel, which simply states the island that the ship crashed on. Which, as far as narration goes, for pre-existing Robotech fans, they don't really need narration, because they already know what's going on. You know, it's pretty obvious based on the source material. But Titan Comics stated that they want to appeal to non-Robotech fans as well. Which, for me, personally, I feel like for people that don't know the source material, more narration definitely would have helped in this situation. We then see, in the next 3 panels, a convoy of choppers land on the island. And then we see that on the choppers were Roy Fokker and Donald Hayes. Roy is in his flight suit and carrying a rifle, and Hayes, let's just call him Hayes. It's weird saying Donald. Hayes is in Halo-esque armor. Hayes orders a lockdown of the site. And we then see a group wearing hazmat suits and what looks to be Galactic Federation helmets from the Galactic Federation soldiers in Metroid. We see a group wearing hazmat suits and those helmets. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this before we move on. First of all, Roy is the only one not wearing a protective suit. Donald Hayes has his Halo-esque armor, which I'm sure provides some hazard, protection. And then obviously the hazmat suits, those go without saying. But Roy is out in the elements. I don't think he's wearing gloves, if I remember correctly, and he's definitely not wearing a helmet. You definitely see his face. So, is he being exposed to some sort of chemical or biohazard that will affect him later in the series? Will he be affected physically? Will this come back up later? I don't know yet, but we'll see. Second, the Galactic Federation Hazard Control, they have their arms up. That group has their arms up. Are they part of a different faction? Is this before peace has been achieved on Earth? Also, in between the Galactic Federation Hazard Control and Roy and Hayes, there's a green body bag that is clearly not Zentradi sized. What's in this green body bag? If they give us more information later, I'll be fine with the lack of information in this scene, but it's just it's not doing it for me until I have a little bit more information. It's kind of overdone. On the next page is where we get some of the exposition that we needed on the first. Continuing the scene from the second page, Hayes tells Fokker that everything he's seeing is classified, and that the technology will be a boon for the ages. We also get a nice little homage to the show here. In the first episode of the show, Roy tells Rick,
"This Robotech thing is so exciting, I just couldn't give it up. It just gets in your blood or something, I don't know."
And in the comic, Roy says, "I've flown my whole life. I aim to be ahead of the game. It's in my blood." Oh my, this page. In my non-spoiler review, I said there were moments that felt forced. And both the moments I was thinking about happen on this page. So in the first panel, there's a time skip of 10 years. Lisa is counting down the minutes until launch, as she does. And she and the other Bridge Bunnies are sitting at a table at a restaurant, enjoying their last meal until they get back from their maiden voyage. And Sammy says, in the less egregious of the info dumps, Sammy says, "Can you believe that we're the only people anywhere that know how to fly the Super Dimension Fortress and that we're going into space?" And, look, I get it. There's only so many pages, and they needed to tell the reader that these are clearly raw recruits and what SDF stands for. I get that. And I'm more fine with this one than the one I'm about to talk about, because the can you believe info dumps have been done countless times. So it's not the first time it's happened. It still feels a bit unnatural. It feels like a conversation they would have already had. But despite it feeling unnatural, I'm more fine with it because it's not as unnatural as on the next panel. Minmay is walking Roy to the table the Bridge Bunnies are at, and she asks if one of the Bridge Bunnies is his girlfriend. His reply is cringe-worthy. Her name is Claudia. She's the Chief Communications Officer of the SDF-1. Oh boy, where do I begin? First of all of that information is literally before page 1 in the character bio section. So, even beyond feeling forced, there's really no reason for them to force that in there because it's already in the information section before page 1. They would have if they were actually paying attention to the stuff before page 1, they would have already seen that. And I will say though, I like to think that he was simply being distracted by Minmay, and that her reply is super sarcastic. Wow, that is so awesome for you. But after that cringeworthy moment, they all leave the table celebrating. On the next page, we get Rick flying his racer, and the first two panels play out pretty similarly to the show. But then, two fighters fly on either side of him and tell him that he's in restricted airspace and ask for his invitation code. He tells them that he doesn't have one, and that Roy is his big brother. After they land, Roy approaches him with two Halo-esque soldiers behind him. And Roy tells Rick that he needs to leave. After some banter, Roy decides that it's just best to have Rick arrested. Roy emphasizes that today is not the day and begins to walk off. And the two Halo-esque soldiers arresting Rick tell Rick that he could spend his whole life trying to fill those shoes. And then on the next page, we could have used some narration again, like on the first. I'm a Robotech fan, and I'm aware of what Centrati cruisers are and what landing pods are. But it took even me a while. Just staring at the page, it took me a couple minutes to realize, oh, they're dropping off landing pods. So that could have used some sort of narration. I'm sure they could have figured something out there. On the bridge, Claudia is reporting the landing pods to Global. Global orders Claudia to reclassify them as targets, and Lisa to scramble the Veritex. Kim and Sammy also get some orders, and I actually like that this page reads like a war film would interpret the situation. Not sure about an actual army because I've never actually fought in a war, but I like that it portrays it like a war film would portray it. I also find it interesting that despite the fact that Lisa in both this and in the show, takes her job seriously. In this, she gets stopped twice. Once by Claudia, once by Global, for speaking while orders are being given, which is something she should know not to do. Like in the show, the Sea Sergeants get shot down after reporting the battle pods. Roy orders one of the Halo-esque soldiers to check on Rick before he takes off. Sorry. Take 2. Like in the show, the Sea Sergeants get shot down after reporting the battle pods. Roy orders one of the Halo-esque soldiers to check on Rick. Global gets a call from the Senator, and it pretty much plays out like it does in the show, where he's kind of forced to take off. The main guns begin to fire, and the Halo-esque soldier discovers that Rick has escaped. Rick is running towards his racer until his racer is blown up when the main guns decide to fire. The main guns also destroy a bunch of Zentradi battle pods and a Zentradi scout ship. The remaining battle pods end up reaching the city, and the real fight begins. Lisa is giving a status update to Global when she notices something. Lisa asks Rick what he is doing, and Rick replies that he's trying to leave the island. He then asks her what the fighter is, because it's unlike anything he's seen. Roy interjects, telling Lisa that Rick is not a pilot, and his name, and that he shouldn't be flying the fighter. She tells Rick to pull a lever marked G. He does, and crashes into some buildings, into Guardian mode. Min-May confronts Rick with a baseball bat in hand, and Rick sees a battle pod, shoots it, pew, 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 and then apologizes to Min-May. Min-May continues to scold him, and he informs her that, hey, there's a battle going on. And then he offers her a ride so that she can escape, to which she declines. Lisa reports to Global that the shelters are reporting 99% capacity, and Global then orders the SDF-1 into the air. Claudia recalls the fighter when Roy then asks about Rick. During his conversation with Lisa, he tells her that she will have a front row seat at his disciplinary hearing after everything is said and done. Min-May, after some belligerence, finally agrees to get into the fighter when something emerges out of the battle pod that Rick shot. Shocking, both he and Min-May. Now, before we get into the into my thoughts about it, which I've kind of already shared in my non-spoiler review, but before we get into all of that, we're going to do a little thing I call the difference tracker. In this, I'm just going to discuss the differences between it and the show, comparing the two, until it gets to the point where it's not really viable to compare the two anymore. After all, they did say that they are going to diverge from where the show went, and after issue 4, oh boy, we're going to get to issue 4 at some point. But after issue 4, it's definitely going to diverge. So how long I keep doing this difference tracker will depend on the direction the series goes. In this, the comic actually begins with the immediate aftermath of the SDF-1 crashing, whereas in the show, it just skips straight to the 10-year time skip. The bridge crew seems to be a bit closer than they were in the show, which I'm on the fence about. In the show, you can definitely see that they haven't worked together all that long. In the show, they're a bit chippy with each other, actually, with the whole Lisa and Claudia interaction, and then the other Bridge Bunnies kind of poking and prodding both beasts, trying to get more out of them. In this, they actually look like they're a pretty close-knit group. They didn't fight at all. They're even having lunch or dinner or whatever it is together at a restaurant before their first assignment. So in the show, you can see the growth, because they start off at that point where it's like, they're not close, and then you can see them get closer as the show progresses. In this, since they're already so close, I don't know if we're going to get that. So I'm kind of on the fence about how I feel about that, but there's difference there. The Robotech Defense Force isn't messing around with the shenanigans and the break of procedure. And in the show, it was a fairly formal army. It was not at all like any of the armies you would see in real life. They broke procedure all the time. There was constant shenanigans within the ranks that really wouldn't happen in an actual army. In this, it is much more regimented. There is no breaking the procedure. You can't just fly into restricted airspace and have the commanding officer of the Baratech squads be like, "Oh, hey, what are you trying to do? Make a perfect fool of me?" No. You fly into restricted airspace, you have to leave. You don't leave, you get arrested, or you get shot down. It's very more regimented. That's just one example, but it's a lot more tight. They run a tighter ship in this. There really is no love lost between Rick and Roy. As I just kind of mentioned in the beginning, Roy's like, "What are you trying to do? Make a perfect fool of me?" And Rick's answer is, "Nobody's perfect." And then after, he lands and they have a conversation, "I suppose you haven't heard of me shooting down 108 enemy planes. Oh, I won the amateur flying competition 8 years in a row." And then them at the vending machine with soda, with pop, and just kind of drinking it and talking and staring at women's butts. In this, he's like, "No, you cannot be talking about home because you haven't been at home." And Roy's like, "Well, you can't be here, so you need to leave or I need to put you in jail." There's no love lost between Rick and Roy in this. Global seems, going back to running a tighter ship, Global is a little bit more procedural. In the show, just one example. In the show, when they are turning on the anti-gravity, he's like, "Full power!" Here, he's like, 25% power, and we'll see where things go from there. And in the show, the anti-gravity pods break away from the ship and just keep going while the ship falls. Because you can't just go 100% just right off the bat. Whereas 25% lifts perfectly. They didn't need the thrusters at all. Rick's racer gets blown up. In the show, Rick continues using his racer for another 3 episodes. In this, nope, blown up. Also, side note, why is Rick wearing an RDF flight suit? It was brought to my attention by someone in the comments of my non-spoiler review. It was a very good question. Why is he wearing an RDF flight suit if he's not part of the RDF? It's a very curious thing. I'm not sure why that is. Could just be they're using generic flight suits, which is kind of weird because they're an army. You'd think that they'd have a standard issue that no one else has, but whatever. Rick's wearing a RDF flight suit. Peanut butter jelly, Minmay has a baseball bat. Minmay is older in this, and she has a bit of a feisty personality. I like it. Like most fans, this issue kind of left me with a little bit left to desire. I wasn't a huge fan of the issue. I was a lot more positive about it than some of the fans. I was willing to wait and let it play out, see where things go before I judge the first issue, because first issues, let's face it, first issues have their problems. Every comic series out there, the first issue has its problems, because it can't give you everything to start with. Otherwise it'd be kind of boring. So first issues always have their issues. So I was more willing to give this comic a chance than some of the other fans. But like most fans, I was a little... I wasn't a huge fan of it. Looking back now, having seen the first chunk of comics, I'm a lot more okay with this than when I first was, but it's still not my favorite. So let me know what you guys think about this breakdown of the comic series. Let me know what you think about the comic series in general, and what you thought about the first issue. As I said, I know a lot of people aren't big fans of it, but I'm a lot more okay with it because I let it play out, and it's played out to my liking, at least. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know about, what you think of the series so far. Let me know what you think about Minmay. A lot of people don't like her. I'm fine with her in this comic series. I actually think she's better in this comic series than she was in the show. But let me know everything about what you think down below, and I will see you guys next time.